What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast where you didn't really ask for it, but hey, we're going to give it to you anyways. This is a podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and anything about movies. I'm one of your co-hosts, Chase Lee, and hey guys, listen, if you're searching on the internet for another movie podcast and you accidentally stumbled across ours, and you're like, what's this Reel Me In business going on here? What are you guys trying to sell? You guys some shady business or something? You come inside and you're just like, what is this? And then if you're curious, whatever, don't worry. We welcome every stranger that comes across our podcast that's new, or even the returning listeners. If you're a movie fan, that's what we do here. We just talk about movies. We're passionate about this stuff. We'll argue about this stuff. That's what makes it a lot of fun. So if you're a movie fan or just a fan of art, come join the community. That's just what we do here. If you are new, welcome once again. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. What we typically do on this show is we'll go over some movie news and some trailers that drop throughout the week, and we will commentate on them for you guys, and then we will also review a movie or movies that happen to open on said weekend that we're recording, and then of course box office results to accompany that. Usually the movies that we review, either a blockbuster and indie, couple blockbusters, couple indies. We like to mix it up for you guys, not just be like a typical podcast, just give you a full range of the industry. This is episode 235. This one's going to be a little different. One, we're recording on a Friday, so no box office results. And two, I am not reviewing the major movie that's coming out this weekend. I had enough money for one movie during the 2-week period. It was either Jurassic World or Incredibles 2. Gee, I wonder which one I picked. So, I had a choice. I picked, so it's just going to happen like this sometimes, guys. I don't mean to do it on purpose. Movies are expensive. So yeah. But, we're actually going to be doing, or Joel's going to be redoing Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. He's actually going to introduce the movie that we're going to kind of quickly review together. And speaking of the Joel, how are we doing this week, man? I mean, it's the summer's kicking in. It's getting hotter outside. I'm pretty sure I had a heat stroke today in the 100-degree weather walking home. So, what have you been up to?
Oh, just this week was kind of uneventful for me. Although the next week is gonna be major. I had my nephews over last weekend. They spent time here, and then next week my grandparents are coming in for 10 days. So that'll be interesting. Always good to have them here. And then just kind of watching movies. I have been doing for a Facebook group. I've been doing this long piece on why Mission Impossible 2, despite being the least popular of the series, is my favorite. And so that's been interesting. I finished revisiting the series this week, and I really enjoy all of them. But yeah, that's been my thing. I'm probably going to my Facebook is largely public, so if any of y'all wants to visit that, it'll probably go on my Facebook as well. It's not something that's going to be featured on any website that I write for. But yeah, it's currently it's sitting at about 1,000 words, and I've still got a little bit to go. So that's going to be fun, and obviously super excited for Fallout to come out. Saw the trailer again today, just getting pumped up for that. So anyway, just been kind of your usual week. How about yours?
It was pretty good, but not as exciting as yours, making people angry with that Mission Impossible 2 review. I imagine when you posted it up, I imagine it being like the opening scene in Shrek, where all the townspeople are coming with, pitchforks and torches, and, they're coming towards Shrek's house, and they're super angry. So, like, this is the Facebook mob coming towards Joel, and then Joel, like, actually is behind them, and then he like roars at them, and they just kind of run away. I mean, that's what I kind of figured.
Well,
that was
it's not up yet. I'm still writing it.
That's what it's going to be like. Where Joel's going to stand his ground and just pretty much just growl at them, and they're going to run away.
Well, what's cool is that for the Facebook group, there's a period of time that they choose every year, and this time it's July through September, I think, where they'll let a lot of their members write about something that is generally unbeloved. And so that can, equal something that's won Oscars, and since gotten a reputation of being safe or whatever that people really love, or the least popular of a series being your favorite or whatever, and that's what I chose. Or some cult classic that's like remembered mostly ironically that somebody loves unironically. And I might do that next year because I know they do it every year. I might do that next year with White House Down. That might be my thing next year.
Joel,
Anyway,
do you want to lose listeners? Like, is that your goal? Is to just make our viewer count like lower and lower?
what my goal is to educate guys.
Oh my God,
White House Down is brilliant, and yeah.
I'm just yanking his chain, guys. I actually have not seen the movie, but I mean, it's just really funny because like Joel's been like the warrior with that movie. He's just like, this is great, and everyone's like, no, it's not, and he's like the only one like on his side of the battlefield. I
might actually end up doing like a twofer because there's a few movies from summer 2013 that weren't very well liked. Big movies that weren't well liked. Maybe three of them. White House Down, World War Z, and The Lone Ranger that I really like, and I might just like try to do that or something. I don't know.
Well, Joel, Godspeed and enjoy the backlash online. And
thank you.
Speaking of our wonderful listeners, I typically look at the kind of stats of each episode just to kind of see where all the episodes are kind of pinging out. Across the world, whether it be mostly in the U.S. or, Canada, other countries. And so I found it interesting that this show is listened to 30% of our audience is from the U.S. and then 28%, so almost the same as the U.S., is Canada. I didn't I've seen Canada kind of pop up in the past several months, but now it's just like kind of growing in Canada. I don't know who you wonderful people are up there that are listening to this podcast and are spreading it around, but God bless you. I mean, I can't believe that like Canada and the U.S. are pretty much tied, but that's awesome. We got a lot of Canadian listeners, but I didn't really watch anything new. I watched a documentary. That's going to go up on my YouTube page. It was whatever. It's not really anything to kind of brag about.
I saw your rating. I know what it is.
Yeah, so. It's only because it's oversaturated. If you look on Netflix, they literally have like 20,000 documentaries on this subject matter, and that's cool. It's informative, but you start to get lost in the fray a little bit. And I'm like, this movie was a little too late for its time. So yeah, it was just kind of like one of those weeks where I didn't watch too much. I might catch up on some stuff next week when I come back from my vacation. That's why we're recording early, but yeah, pretty chill week. And walking in the heat, guys, don't do it. I don't recommend it. Joel, just starting with the news. Last week we had a bunch of trailers drop. Now it's kind of the opposite, where we had some pretty interesting news stories drop, like a bunch of them in like a small amount of trailers. So. What's going on in that news world?
Yeah, so there are a couple of kind of little small things, and then a couple of really big hitters. And then one really interesting conversation starter. Let's just say that. So, this first one, I don't have a whole lot of empirical information about this, because I haven't seen the three movies that belong to this company. But Cartoon Saloon is an Irish animation studio that has kind of taken the awards race by storm, because they've been nominated 3 times now for The Secret of Kells, Song of the Sea, and The Breadwinner, which are their only major feature releases. So that's pretty significant. And now they have struck a deal with Apple in order to produce a lot more. And right now they have two directors that have directed their movies. One of them is Tom Moore, who has made the first 2 of them, The Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea, and then Nora Toomey, I forgot, I don't know how to say her last name. I think it's Nora Toomey, who directed The Breadwinner, which I hear was a lot more adult, a lot more mature. And so this is pretty big news for them. They're still a fairly small company. They have another movie in the works right now from Tom Moore called Wolfwalkers. I don't know anything about that movie, just to let y'all know that. But they also have a couple of series that are on I don't know what it is. I think it's only in worldwide markets. Puffin Rock and Skunk Fu, which is a great name. And then also in terms of production for TV, they've got something called Viking School. That's an animated series as well. So pretty cool to see. We're literally watching a company kind of come into their own. Not that they haven't already. I mean, being nominated for their only 3 releases is fairly significant. But I'm excited to finally check those out. We have copies of those at work. I really need to rent. The Breadwinner just came out on home viewing, so I got to catch up with those, and I'm certainly excited to see what else they have in store with this new platform, especially considering something like Apple can draw bigger names in. They might be able to get some stars because I'm pretty sure that there aren't very many big names attached to their projects. So that'll be pretty cool. Do you have any history with them at all, like watching any of their stuff?
No, not really. But I mean, this kind of makes sense. It's almost like Tim Cook is channeling Steve Jobs to pretty much do what he did back in the day with Pixar.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this doesn't surprise me. Apple's going to take over the world just like with Disney, so you might as well jump into the business, right?
And then Amazon's going to buy everyone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because we live in this day and age now where I'm not really surprised when any company wants to jump into making a movie. I mean, we're about to talk about it, but the film Gotti with John Travolta and American Animals, those were both distributed by MoviePass. So
yeah,
I mean, they're a failing company, yet they still got in the game. It's just one of those things where it doesn't surprise me, and they have enough money to where they can throw it at anything, and it makes sense if they want to kind of dip their toes a little bit into the animation pool and have their own little Pixar branch or whatever. Yeah, do it with kind of not an unknown company, but an unknown company to the the masses here, and so maybe if they do a movie, they
kind
can
of
get
a breakthrough company.
Yeah, I mean,
because it's they got their start almost a decade ago, but
yeah, exactly. But like
they kind of spent a long time on projects that have now just come out, and they're only 3 movies in, so it's very much a breakthrough company.
That Apple, everyone knows Apple, so maybe if they can partner up with them, they can get their this animation company's name out there to where it could be a household name. And that's kind of cool, propping up the little guys. That's what I'm always there for. So this this news does not surprise me.
Absolutely. The next bit of news is kind of, I'm going to pair them up. Basically, 2 big names in the music industry are doing biopics about 2 big names in the music industry. So we have Dr. Dre is going to be producing a Marvin Gaye film. I'm super excited about that because Gaye's life was really, really interesting and ended tragically. Very, very tumultuous. A lot of dark stuff happened there, and I guess I won't tell. Do you know how he was killed, right?
Honestly, I don't recall, and that's the weird thing when people bring up like musicians. They're just like, you don't know much about this person. It's like I'm not saying I don't. I'm unaware of musicians and music. As a kid, I just never listened to that much outside of my like little group of music, and so I didn't really culture myself, if you will. So I don't know what happened.
Well, he was actually murdered by, I think, his father.
Oh wow.
And on his birthday, I believe. So it's very, and there's a lot more there. There's a lot to that story. So it's very tumultuous, very interesting. And as we know from a recent documentary that we saw, Sammy Davis Jr.'s life was full. And so we have Lionel Richie, whose own life is pretty full, taking on the movie about him. And it's going to be partly produced by Sammy Davis Jr.'s family. So really, really interesting. I'm super excited to see who they get to play him because he's kind of a one-of-a-kind personality. So, I mean, really both of them. Marvin Gaye was a little more reserved in terms of personality than Davis was, but of course, who isn't? Really exciting in both of these cases. I think that these are interesting lives. They certainly lend themselves well to a cinematic treatment. So I'm excited, and 2 very talented people taking on the productions. So Yeah, what are your thoughts about this, especially Sammy Davis Jr.?
Yeah, I mean, we just saw the Sammy Davis Jr. Documentary at the Dallas International Film Festival, and I really never knew much about the guy. And I told you after the movie, I was like, that was cool. It was, like you said, a meat and potatoes type of movie, but I knew way more about the man coming out of the movie than I did going in. And I think that's kind of important. That's the whole point of a documentary. And so now we're actually going to get a biopic, and I'm super excited for that. Just because we just saw the documentary. Now I'm excited to kind of see like a
dramatized version,
a dramatized picture. And so cool. I'm excited for that. The Marvin Gaye biopic, don't really know much, but I mean, hey, listen, if Dr. Dre can, produce withstanding, how he approached the movie, Straight Outta Compton was a pretty great, film. So if he can kind of apply that magic to this one and hopefully tell more truth to the life, I'm all down for it. But biopics, when they're done right, man, they can really, pun intended, sing and really just kind of capture audiences just as big as blockbusters. And so I'm down for both of these.
Indeed, same here. Yeah, Dr. Dre's a ruthless producer. I suspect that if he's going to try to go for a more, let's say, honest version of his life, then we're in really good hands there. The next bit of news is that Sam Mendes is actually going to be making a non-James Bond movie for the first time since 2009's Away We Go. I bet you all didn't know that, right? And this one is called 1917. Now, we actually do not know what this movie is about yet, but we do know, if you know history, that year was really important for World War I. There was the U.S. declared war on Germany, and London suffered its first major German bombing raid. So it could be about one of those things. It could be something set against the backdrop. We really don't know. All we know is that Mendes is going to be directing it with Steven Spielberg's Amblin producing it. And Spielberg describes it as, and I quote here, hugely daring and ambitious. So this is very interesting. I'm really excited to see what this is, because if it's like Dunkirk-esque, then that could be really a really special kind of thing. So I am super excited to see whatever they have up their sleeve here. Mendes, whatever people say about it now, I think American Beauty is one of the best movies ever made. One of the best picture winners that I've seen, and if not the best. And so, and I love Away We Go. I still need to see a couple of his movies, honestly, that are not the James Bond ones. But by and large, I think he's a little less. As much as I love Skyfall, I think he's a little less interesting in that mode than he is in his original movie mode. And Road to Perdition is great, and yeah, so I'm really excited to see this. I can't wait. So,
yeah, I mean, he struck gold with American Beauty because that's the last time he worked with Spielberg and DreamWorks and stuff, and so that was almost 20 years ago. So if they can strike the same magic again with a war film, and the fact that Spielberg has done many war films, like this sounds like the recipe for several Oscar statues. So
oh yeah,
I'm down for
if
this.
If it can be, now this is I mean, it's a big question here, but they're planning to begin in April 2019 to produce this now, and apparently they're planning for a December release after that. So I don't know
they're
what
doing
they have.
The Post again.
The Post, I guess. I guess so. This is definitely going to be an Oscar contender, and how fitting if they're able to make that release, because he won an Oscar for a 1999 movie. He ended a decade, so now maybe he can end another decade with a movie that gets him another Oscar.
That'd be crazy.
That would be awesome. 20 years after 20 years. Wow. after American Beauty. So
don't say that, Joel. My 10-year reunion for high school is tomorrow. I'm not going, but that just it's just another
mine is next Friday. I understand.
It's depressing, but I'm a history buff, so I will watch anything with history, and I know that World War II is like kind of everyone's kind of go-to war to research and kind of dive into, but no, that's what I was getting to.
Oh, I see.
We haven't really gotten a lot of World War I mainstream movies, so this will be nice to actually have a nice
I think
mix.
The last one might have actually been Warhorse.
Yeah.
From Spielberg. So clearly that was the right person to go to, because he obviously did a lot of, to kind of get behind this project, because he clearly did a lot of research. Warhorse is great. And really exciting stuff all around. I'm super pumped. I'm also very happy to hear about this. So, John Lasseter, unfortunately, was one of the people whose there were reports about him with an abusive nature. Let's say, I'm not going to talk about it at length, but in any case, he finally is exiting his position. I believe that he's exiting at the end of this year. And he's going to be replaced in part in two places, sort of. At Pixar, Pete Docter is taking over, which totally makes sense. I mean, I totally I'm not surprised to hear that at all.
He's one of the OGs.
He's one of the OGs. He's a major player still. He has his hands in every project, just about, in some way. And then over at Disney Animation, you have Jennifer Lee, who was the co-director and screenwriter of Frozen, and I mean, come on, that's a perfect choice. And I'm super excited to hear about this. Super excited for Lasseter to get out, just go, and for these two to come in. Maybe it'll shake things up in terms of, just approaches to movies. It might just result in a bit of a for a while now, we've been getting a lot of sequels. So maybe that can, shift away from that, do more original projects. That's probably going to be one of the things that comes about. I can imagine there will at least be more of them. And I'm really happy to hear this. Both of those companies are going to be in good hands.
Yeah, so. I mean, this makes total sense. And I don't have respect for Lasseter anymore, but the only respect I will give him, like the slightest amount of respect, is that he was the man that spearheaded Disney Animation and Pixar, which is pretty hard to do. So I will give him, I will give him that. But on a business move, because the two people that got are great. On a business move, I'm glad they have a separate person for each division, so that way they can fully concentrate all their creative energy. Pete Docter going into Pixar and then Jennifer Lee going into Disney Animation. It makes total sense. Pete Docter's been there since Monsters, Inc., which was back in 2001. So, and Jennifer Lee, like you said, with Wreck-It Ralph and Frozen and stuff, so she's got her hand in kind of the modern era. So,
what'll be interesting too, because if there's been sort of this lingering complaint about Disney Animation, is that they make movies that feel like Pixar. I've seen that be commented by people a lot, and it might be because one of the leaders of Pixar led it. So maybe what they can do is have somebody who doesn't really do Pixar stuff be over it, and then they can kind of diverge styles a bit, so that we're not just watching a bunch of movies that generally kind of feel the same. Whatever, that's not a comment on quality of the movies, but they do kind of play similarly. There's a similar animation style. Maybe they can spice that up a little bit, and a similar sensibility. Maybe they can change it up a little bit, and so that'll be interesting to see if that happens. I'm not crossing my fingers that they're going to be completely different from now on. That's not what I'm saying. I just feel like there's going to be a slight divergence of style and sensibility, and just because there's two people now, they're going to be separate entities, generally speaking. So. It'll be very interesting to see that. Now, guys, okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to this last bit of news and then come back to one that was technically before it on our notes. All right, so last week we were talking about how Comcast was bidding for Fox with $65.3 billion to buy Fox, and now Disney has beat it. Now, this is insanity. Okay, they beat it with a $71.3 billion bid. Now, I want people to understand that $6 billion is a lot of money. That is more money than any current singular domestic or worldwide grosser in movie history. I think by what, like $3 billion or so? This is insane, guys. And again, I was talking about it last week. I do not like corporatization. I do not like it. This stuff is frightening to me. I think that it's irresponsible and dangerous occasionally. You're just going to buy everything out. There's not going to be any room for just nuance here. There's not going to be anything sensible about this procedure. It's going to be purely corporate mandated, and I hate that. And I just think that it's so wrong in every way. It's a disgusting amount of money to spend on a company to buy up properties and dilute oversaturate the market with everything. It's just corporate nonsense, and I hate it. So I'm going to hand it over to to my esteemed colleague over there, Chase.
Yeah. I want people to put this in perspective. Disney offered $20 billion less as the initiative offer. The fact that Comcast squeezed $20 billion more out of Bob Iger is astounding. And also, that is nearly half of Disney's worth. They're putting a lot of money into this, and Comcast is around the same amount net worth-wise. So like they're also hurting themselves. We're getting into the range now where it's too much money, and you're probably thinking like, well, $50 billion wasn't too much. That's still a lot of money, but like now we're getting into like obscene amounts. And I'm with Joel. I don't like corporate mergers. I mean, with the whole AT&T thing, now anything goes, and it's just gonna be the wild, wild west out there, and people are just gonna be buying everything.
So many awful precedents are being set by this stuff, and it just, I mean, even for corporate mergers have existed for decades and centuries and whatever, but
you know what this is, right? This is a pissing match. If you go into kind of like the relationships of the higher ups. I was listening on a podcast earlier this week that Bob Iger and the head of Comcast do not like each other. So Comcast basically he did the bid just to scare Bob, and then Bob retaliated and made him spend even more money. And I think that this rivalry is even more potent when you kind of look around. I didn't realize this, but the Ant-Man and Wasp premiere is tonight, and there's no embargo on it, which means they scheduled the screening on the night that Jurassic World opens, and the embargo is lifted to where they can talk about it, so they can try to flood the conversation and downplay Jurassic World this week. And I'm like, wow, this is actually like a heated battle between these two. So I just found that kind of funny.
Yeah, it's just so worrisome. It's getting to the point that and it doesn't really make any surprise for me because of just the times we live in right now. But kind of a vaulting of the corporate over the personal, and it's just disgusting.
Joel, speaking of the times that we live in, are the Gotti producers having strokes over there? What's going on?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is actually spun into something quite beyond itself. And I'm gonna get into this. There's so much more to the story than just an advertisement, but it starts with one. So as you guys know, or maybe you don't, you probably don't, considering it's you probably don't know this. But last week there was a movie that released called Gotti, and it starred John Travolta as John Gotti, who is a gangster. Anyway, Y'all know who John Gotti is, I'm certain. But I don't know if you knew that there was a movie that came out last week. It was not screened. It did not receive Thursday night previews that I know of. And it made $1.7 million in its opening weekend at 503 theaters. Just so you know, that's really bad for any movie of any budget. That's not good. That is a terrible number. For any sort of release at over 500 theaters, that's awful. So, and MoviePass, like Chase said, MoviePass, I think that they produced 40% of it. And there are, I think, from what I've heard, on screen, there are credited 44 producers. So, yeah. So, now, of course, none of that has anything to do with the ultimate reaction to the movie, although obviously the lack of screenings didn't put a lot of faith in people's, anticipation or critics' anticipation, if they have any. Okay. So it earned a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. 25 critics reviewed it, including our friend Mark Dusick, who gave it like 1 star, which is pretty bad for him. That's pretty low because he doesn't always go lower than that. So fairly bad reviews. It has a 0%, and I think even the New York Post called it the worst mob movie of all time, which is saying a lot because, I mean, maybe they're using a very tight-knit description, but the movie Geely was a mob movie, technically. I haven't seen it. I know that it's a mob movie, and I know that it was at one point considered the worst movie ever made, so whatever. That's kind of hyperbole to me, but it has caused the producers, or at least the PR people, to go on Twitter and start attacking film critics and I'm going to read this tweet. Audiences loved Gotti, but critics don't want you to see it. The question is why? Trust the people and see it for yourself. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. One, this was tweeted on. Oh no, that their original tweet came out, I think, the day after. I think it might have been the day after. So, and it said something similar, but it was also like, basically they called critics trolls behind a keyboard, which, okay, fine, whatever. I've heard that so many times. All right, so there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, we have no actual proof that audiences loved Gotti. We know that only 1.7 million worth of them saw it in the opening weekend, at least in America, and I assume that it doesn't have any widespread release around the world. At least I haven't heard about anything. So we have no proof of that. So then now we have this thing that says, but critics don't want you to see it. Okay, I have to explain some things to people because if you watch this show, you probably get this already. But if this is your first time listening to this, if you just happen to find this episode, I just want to tell you. All right, Chase and I don't really consider it our job to tell you what to see. That's not our job. It's a very thin line between that phrase and what I'm about to say. We tell you what we think you should see. And there's a difference between the two. The difference is that I'm not literally ordering you to go out to a theater and see some movie, whatever movie, some movie that I love. I'm not telling you to see it. I'm also not telling you not to see some movie that I hate. If you want to see them, fine, go ahead. Spend your money. It's your decision. I understand that. That's not our job. Our job is to tell you what we think about movies, and then maybe you use that to determine whether or not you see something. Literally. We start a conversation, and it's up to you to determine whether or not you want to see a movie. So I didn't see Gotti. I'm probably going to, just out of curiosity, I'll probably see it, when it comes out on home video. But I didn't see it in theaters. I had better things to do. So I had to record a podcast, for instance, because that was last week. So, yeah, I wasn't super interested in it anyway because it looked fairly, kind of routine for a mob movie. Now I understand it's literally just a succession of mob movie images that don't really feed into a story. That's what I'm understanding. I haven't found out myself. But in any case, yeah, Our job is to tell you what we think. Literally, it's as Gene Siskel once said. It's maybe it's a little different for Chase and I because we're not on the ground reporting for a paper, but it's the same general concept. We are reporters telling you what we think about a movie, and the facts that we use are the takeaways that we had from the movie. We're not trying to make you see a movie. If you want to go see whatever, that's fine. We're just telling you what we think. So that's important to know, because it's not that critics don't want people to see it. It's that critics said that it was bad. So go see whatever you want. The critic's job, literally, is to just tell you how the movie is from a certain perspective that has come from a long life of watching movies. That's what it is. Unless you decided to get into film criticism with no history of it, whatever. That's a whole different conversation. Now, this has caused a big time conversation that sparked again, but it really was since it was before Gotti came out, and this is kind of added on to it. And there's a great piece that everybody should go look up on Los Angeles on the Los Angeles Times from Justin Chang, one of the great writers right now, who basically talked about the job of a critic and who it's for. And he kind of used this as a starting point for another topic, but it was a good point. And it reminded him of a comment that Brie Larson made at a I think some sort of festival or award receipt, or I don't know. Anyway, and it's this idea of who a movie is made for. And part of that conversation, there's a whole other side to this about, the race, gender, sex, whatever, of the writer seeing the movie. For instance, Larson was saying she wasn't really interested in what a 60-year-old white man thought of A Wrinkle in Time because it wasn't made for him, which I don't get that, but kind of included in that in some of her arguments were critics in general. Now, she ultimately conceded that reviews are important because her career was partly made or broke through as a result of critics stumping for her performance in Room a few years ago. She would not have won an Oscar without critics bringing to light the fact that her performance was great in the film festivals that it showed in. So, all right. This is very tricky material because I feel like there's this idea that critics are boogeymen in some way, that people like Chase and I, or people more qualified like Mark, are basically just coming into it to complain about everything. And it's kind of inherent in the word critic, because obviously that ties back to the word criticize, which people feel like that means complain. So they just feel like critics are people who complain professionally. Now, sometimes that does happen. I will complain about a movie and it's semi-professional. I'm not paid for it, but I'll complain about a movie, and it sort of adds to that, that no critic can be pleased. Here's the problem, guys. The only people who can be pleased a whole lot are people who aren't very discerning about the movies they watch or haven't seen very many movies. So repeated watching of movies over a long course of time will make you pick up on formulas, and then you'll get tired of seeing those formulas at some point. You'll also get a good, kind of basis for what works for you dramatically. And over time, that constitutes into a taste. A critic is like any other person. They're watching the movie. They have a taste that informs their viewing of that movie. And if that movie doesn't fulfill that taste, or some other reason that they feel that it's a negative, there was a negative reaction, they will give that negative reaction. That's all. There's no stakes in this. There's beyond the financial, and the financial isn't even important in the long run. And all it is I'm telling you what I think about a movie, and I happen to have kind of a semi-public platform, and people might listen to it or read it on my website or whatever. That's all. And so this whole thing with producers and actors and people in the business kind of pushing critics off to the side as if there's no authority that they have in this is silly, because like any of them, they have a history in engaging with the art, and I just don't understand the backlash that critics get from really anybody, because honestly, like, I'm gonna say it, Chase's opinion, my opinion, Mark's opinion, none of it matters in the long run. It's not because we're some part of the kind of the media push for the movies. Now, sometimes, there it kind of fences that line, because obviously critics are allowed to go to press screenings, which are obviously hosted by, in part by the companies that make the movies. They're the ones who allow it to be screened, such as with Gotti. Apparently they didn't want to because they didn't have any confidence in it. So there is obviously that kind of element to it. You'll have the junkets where press members get to go and mingle with producers and all of that, and it was something that Siskel hated, never did, and for a good reason. It's not something that honestly is hugely appealing to me either. But then you also have the little question papers at the end of some of the screenings, where they'll tell you to write your thoughts, and what they're doing there is they're fishing for quote whoring. That's all it is. They're fishing for quote whoring. They're looking for something to put in a trailer or in a TV spot, and they're not looking for anything other than that. It's all about the marketing. It's not about a genuine response. That's why they always do the hashtags for the big movie, so you can tweet with the hashtag. All it does is it pushes the media. And so that's not our job as critics. Our job as critics is to report to you what we think about a movie. That's all. That's it. That's the extent of it. Whatever happens with the media after that, that's not within my or our control. And so this whole thing about how audiences loved Gotti, but critics don't want you to see it. The question is why? No, the question is, what are you talking about? That's the question. I don't understand it. And if they knew, if they were actually paying attention to the box office numbers, they wouldn't even be saying that. I don't know what sparked that tweet, considering it's completely not provable and likely not true, considering its box office return. But it's so weird to me. It's so bizarre. I can't tell you how bizarre it was to watch that occur over the weekend. And then this ongoing conversation about who a movie is for. Is it for a critic? No, it's not. It's for audiences who want to watch it. That's all movies are for. And anything beyond that is media stuff, and it's the entertainment industry, all of that, marketing campaigns and all of that nonsense. It's all to the bottom line. That's it. That's all it is. And I don't like it. I don't like it when this happens. It's so bizarre. So my rant is over. Chase, I don't know if you have much to say, but say it.
This pretty much screamed out in such a panic from these 40,000 producers that are on the movie, going, wow, our movie didn't make that much this weekend. Let's all 40,000 of us come together so we can do this weird thing where we just slam people for not, where we slam critics. It's almost as if those 40,000 producers put their own money into it. They lost a lot of money, and now someone is angry. And this whole tweet, I know this isn't a political podcast, and I don't like our president, but I also understand that the media can fabricate stuff. But this screamed out the entire time while I was watching the little ad or whatever. It was like, these are trolls behind the keyboard. Like, they don't know what they're talking about. All I heard in my head was some idiot going, fake news. And it's like, stop it. That was the thing that our stupid commander-in-chief said 300 years ago. Drop it. You sound like a broken record. Okay, so that I got a thought from my chest. And second of all, just basically calling out people or calling out critics that hated it or whatever. They're the bad people in this scenario. It's like, no, that's what box office numbers are for. They reflect what people want to see, and no one wanted to see your crappy movie, and now you're angry about it. And it's like, don't take out your anger on us. It's like, like if Jason Blum, now he makes a lot of hits, but if he has a bad weekend where one of his movies does not make that much, I have never seen that man go on Twitter and go, stupid critics' fault. It's like, he just moves on. It's like, okay, you might have a bad day at the office. Like, why are you so like bent out of shape for it? I'm telling you, I'm not betting any money on this because I'm terrible at gambling. But if I had to, I think these 40,000 producers on this movie put in their own money, and when they saw the returns and they realized this wasn't going to be the next Oscar-winning movie, they were angry, and they went to the PR people and was like, yeah, can you do this like fake news thing? I think people are going to appreciate it. And it's like, no, we're not appreciating it. So I just, the whole thing is just weird, man, because it came out of nowhere. I saw it on my timeline one day. I'm like, did people actually put this together? Like, it was just weird.
It's crazy. Now, what doesn't help is that, yes, of course, in every single, there's trolls in every field. So
True.
There's obviously trolls in the critical field, Rex Reed and Armand White and all that. I think Rex Reed regularly walks out of the movies that he sees. But yeah, right. So it doesn't help that these people exist. And, to use a really old example that's out of nowhere, it happened with, stuff like I Know Who Killed Me. The movie that came out, like 2 days after Lindsay Lohan was arrested and all of that. And it was kind of a tabloid item. And so the studio canceled all the screenings because it was going to put a bad, taste in people's mouth that this person has a movie coming out or whatever. I don't know why that would be, because what she did wasn't like super, super serious. And then, that kind of made some critics gun for the movie in a certain way. Now they should have just actually watched the movie, which is literally awful. But, sometimes there were a lot of reviews that mentioned it as this sort of like little joke where clearly that's actually the subject of their review. So it doesn't help that stuff like that happens. But it doesn't happen on a wide scale. They're not people who regularly think about this stuff. It's just so stupid. And so having this be part of the conversation only furthers that negative perception of critics that they have it out for movies. I don't have it out for any movie. I'm willing to like anything. Anything can be good. If I see Gotti on home viewing and I somehow manage to like it, I'll be honest about that. I have no problem with that. I have no problem going against the status quo. I'm the guy who likes Grown Ups too. So, and I'm proud of saying that because it's a movie that I had fun with, and I know that a lot of people did not, and I understand why they did not. But but of course, in that same argument, I wasn't out to like a movie that everybody else hated. I'm just out to watch the movies, and that's it. That's all I'm doing. So, please have some sense, folks. All right, let's get into our relatively short trailer section, even though there's one movie that's going to cause a lot of conversation, I suspect. Are you ready?
I don't know which one you're talking about, but I'm excited to
go
down this rabbit hole with you. So
okay,
go for it.
All right, so our first trailer, I was stunned to see who was directing this. I did not tell Chase that because I didn't know anything about this movie until I literally sat down with him because I forgot to watch it before we recorded, well before we recorded. So I watched it while I was on Skype here with him, and I did not know who directed it. I hadn't heard of it. I knew that Tiffany Haddish was in it. That was it. I knew that there was a Tiffany Haddish movie called Nobody's Fool coming out, but I had no idea about anything else. And this one is, stars Haddish as this woman who is released from jail by her sister, and apparently somebody starts catfishing her sister, and so they go on this little heist using her criminal background to help them out. Um, okay. It's directed and written and produced by Tyler Perry. Now, this is interesting because they don't really talk about this in the trailer a lot. Now, they mention it, but there's a really good way. I only saw a post about this. Apparently, and it was very vague, but apparently, so I think somebody put it really good. It's like it's just any kind of, generic comedy. It just happens to be directed by Tyler Perry. So I feel like this is something that he decided to do just to kind of give himself a little spending cash, maybe produce some of his plays or whatever that he does, and TV episodes of whatever show he's doing, House of Pain, if that's still on. I don't know where he's at in his career right now. But this doesn't look completely terrible. I think it looks vaguely kind of mean-spirited because the use of the catfishing as a gag is weird. I don't know. It just kind of looks like his usual mesh of like maudlin drama and silly comedy and whatever. I don't have a lot of history with Tyler Perry. I've seen a couple of his movies, but I don't think I've seen any of his comedies, so yeah, I don't have many thoughts about this. I did get a really big chuckle out of two moments in the trailer, though. The last moment, which is a moment between the sister. I'm sorry, no, but between Tiffany Haddish and Oprah. Not Oprah.
Oprah,
and
good Lord.
I know, right? I was actually thinking in my head, not Oprah, and then I said Oprah. Whoopi Goldberg. She plays the mother of the characters. And there's this a really funny moment where she's refusing to acknowledge Tiffany Haddish's existence, and she pretends on the phone that they have a bad connection, and then she continues that joke when they're literally talking face to face out a window. It's really, really clever, and it's really funny. And I feel like the moment, honestly, was one that that Goldberg improvised. That's what I'm guessing. Or at least improvised part of it. Like there was definitely some sort of improvisation going on there. That was really funny. And then, and of course now I forget the other moment, but, man, yeah, I don't remember. Anyway, see, I mean, it doesn't leave much of an impact on you, even in a bad way. It doesn't look bad. It doesn't look good. It just kind of looks whatever to me. So I'll hand it over to Chase.
Yeah, it reminds me of Girls Trip, where it just looks like a very sterilely lit and shot comedy that's going to rely on like the most basic gags. And this is a true story. I did not see Girls Trip last year, and so when they dropped on HBO, I have a HBO Now subscription, so I was like, oh, cool, I get to watch the movie that everyone's been talking about. True story. Watched it with my girlfriend. And we made it 45 minutes in. She fell asleep. I had to go to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom and I came back. And instead of pressing the play button, I shut it off. Because I was like, I'm not into this movie. I haven't laughed once, and I've yet to finish it. So, listen, I think Tiffany Haddish is very personable on camera. She's got a lot of charisma from what I've seen in the interviews and when she, has her little promos when she hosts, shows or whatever. Just haven't gotten into her movies yet. Maybe I'll change my tune when she does all these dramas that she's lined up to do. But in terms of, the comedy that kind of like set her off on this path, I did not care for. With Joel, I didn't really care for this trailer. It's whatever. But that last little bit did get me to where I was like, okay, that's pretty good. So, I will admit when jokes can get me. But other than that, you're right. It's just kind of blah.
Yeah, pretty much. So a trailer that is not blah, at least not in the traditional sense, is our next one. So tell us what it is.
It's one of the most fascinating adult-looking Toy Stories I've ever seen. So this one is called Welcome to Marwen, and this one is directed by Robert Zemeckis, and it stars Steve Carell as a man who was a victim of a kind of attack on him, and these people there, I believe they were white supremacists, right? Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so they beat the crap out of him, and so he takes him to court, but he's got a lot of trauma, and so one of the things he does therapeutically is that he creates like little miniature kind of models and sets with like people and clothes and little cars and stuff, and that's kind of helps. That's kind of how it helps him through his like recovery, and it's an interesting trailer because it starts out, kind of like a movie about a man making miniatures, and then it goes into the miniature world, and the miniatures are talking, and there's violence, and then it gets into the heavy stuff with the Nazi stuff, and it's like this is a weird concept, and I didn't know it was based on there was a documentary about the man that Steve Carell is portraying, and I didn't know that movie existed. But you know what? I liked the trailer. It got my attention. The animation looks quite weird, even for Zemeckis film that was one of the pioneers of stop motion back in the day, or not stop motion, excuse me, motion capture. So the miniature animation is kind of weird. It's a little off-putting, but I guess it's kind of the point. They look almost realistic. I think the story could be one of those ones that could be powerful and have it to where we just sympathize with this guy the whole way through. We want to see justice. And with Robert Zemeckis, I'm a huge fan of his modern stuff. I like The Walk quite a bit. I love Flight. So yeah, I'm all on board for anything modern Zemeckis wise, and he's even a classic director with his older stuff. So, Joel, is this the trailer you were talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
This is one of the most bizarre looking movies I've seen in a while. Boy, there's a lot of stuff going on in this trailer, and I honestly feel like there's too much that this movie's trying to do, at least from afar. Now, maybe it's like this super long movie or something, and so it can juggle all of those, but this is definitely going to be this year's downsizing in terms of the critical reception, because it's coming out around the same time. It's got this kind of zany fantasy vibe where, and it's a drama comedy hybrid about, some fairly serious subject matter being used as sort of a springboard to say something. And by say something, I mean say something with both S's at the beginning of both words capitalized. It's clearly going to be a message movie in some way. It's obviously about PTSD in a very serious way. There's stuff that I like about this trailer a lot. I think Steve Carell looked great. I think that the animation looks unique, at least. We also see like Leslie Mann and Janelle Monáe, which is pretty cool cast, But man, it just feels like there's a lot that this movie's trying to do, and maybe a little too much in the process. I'm gonna have to see the movie to have any real feelings about this trailer. And I know how weird that sounds, but it looks all over the place. I'm certainly interested in it, though. Yeah,
that's actually...
obviously it has. It's one that I'm going to see, and I look forward to experiencing it. I just feel like there might be a little too much here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you. Like, there is a lot of things that they're juggling, because they are juggling just on genre alone, fantasy, comedy, drama. Like, it's like you said, it almost reminds you of Downs. I still have yet to see that movie, but I do remember the trailers. It kind of plays out like that, where it's like,
yeah,
it's going to have this fantasy, almost like kid-friendly like spin to it, but it's going to,
be rated R.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to have like some adult things to it.
I suspect this is going to be a hard R, because this, I mean, considering some of the stuff that we see in the model world is strong violence. And just in this trailer, I mean, if there was blood, it would be a Red Band trailer.
I'm going to make a prediction. I actually think it's going to be a hard PG. And here's why. Zemeckis is one of the few directors that can get away with a hard PG. If you watch The Walk, we see Joseph Gordon-Levitt's ass. We hear him say shit 2 times. And it's like, what is this, 1980? Like, I can't believe that Zemeckis can still do that and get away with it. I actually think it will be a hard PG.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, for sure. So we'll see how this turns out. I'm definitely, like I said, I'm definitely interested in seeing it. I just got to see more. I just got to see where they're going with this. I haven't seen the documentary either. I've heard really good things. It's called Marwincol. But yeah, I definitely want to see this. All right, guys, our next trailer is a sequel to my favorite film of 2015. So obviously, I was excited for whenever this trailer came out, even though kind of secretly, although not anymore because I'm about to say it. I was wondering about the use of this sequel. What were they doing? But it's Creed 2. Okay, so this one picks up, fairly soon after the first one. Looks like maybe several years after the first one, because Adonis Creed has a child with the Tessa Thompson character. I forgot her name. The Tessa Thompson character, and he's going to be facing in the ring the son of the man who killed his own father in the ring. Of course, that man was Ivan Drago, played by Dolph Lundgren, who is going to be returning for this movie, although we don't see him or his son in clear view in the latter case. We do see a coat at the end of the trailer with the word Drago on it, so obviously he's coming back, and it's told us that. This one is going to be written by Sylvester Stallone, but directed by a new guy. What is his name? I just totally forgot. Let me see here. I'm going to look it up. Not Ryan Coogler, but it is live show. Stephen Capel Jr. I think it's kind of a newcomer. So, or at least let me look here, because he might have directed something that I don't know about. Nope. Basically his first thing. He's done a lot of shorts, and that's it. So yeah, it's a solid trailer. It's a little underwhelming in terms of what it's following up, but certainly it's eye-catching. I think I'm definitely excited to see a continuation for all of these characters. And yeah, I mean it looks solid. It looks like an event. Certainly they build it like that with the whole, the music building up to the moment where we see Drago's outfit. Yeah, it was solid. I don't have as many thoughts about this one as I would want to, though. I think I need to see a second trailer. And so, clearly the best route for them is to at least reveal Dolph Lundgren in the second trailer, or something. I don't know, but it does look solid, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I actually like the trailer quite a bit, and I'm gonna say a couple things that are gonna probably make your eyes roll, and then make our listeners' eyes roll. Number one, to get super geeky and sweaty for a second, since the first Creed, Michael B. Jordan, Tessa Thompson, and Sylvester Stallone have all three been in a Marvel movie of some sort, and they've all been in different ones. That's the first thing. It caught my eye. I was just like, oh yeah, they've all three been in stuff. Second thing,
and Ryan Coogler directed.
And yeah, exactly. Ryan Coogler did Black Panther. So, second,
maybe they can get Stephen Capel Jr. to direct Black Panther 2 or something.
Oh my god! If they do that, then MGM is working with Disney, and I don't care what your conspiracy says. And then the second thing is, this trailer is poising the sequel to even look better than the first one. And I even said when I reviewed the first one, I actually think it's better than the original Rocky. I enjoyed Creed quite a bit. I know it's a bold statement to say, but I really like the way Coogler handled that movie, whether it be the fight scenes or the character moments. This one is a great teaser to set up this continuation of the story. And what I really like about it is they don't really focus on the fights too much. They focus on the character interactions, and we're going to get more kind of character work and more powerful acting scenes dialogue-wise than action-wise, which is, I'm totally cool with that. I actually think that we are going to see no more than 2 fights. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is only the major fight at the end. I actually think this is going to be more somber than the first one action-wise, and I think they're going to kind of build it up a little bit more with maybe like a preliminary fight maybe like in the middle, maybe like a small, quick one. But I think the only major one we're going to see is between him and Drago's son. But you're right, though. I will agree with you that we do need to see more. But I think as a first step for a teaser, I think it did its job, and I think it looks better than Creed 1.
Well, I doubt it'll be better than Creed 1. I just because that's a really high bar.
It's true.
It would literally have to be the best movie of the year for me, which would mean bypassing First Reformed. I'm just giving it away, guys.
Joel, I have seen crazier things happen.
Yeah, but no.
Yeah, but no.
But no. I don't think it looks better than the first one, and I think it's because the first one was not repeating Rocky. And it didn't even look like it was going to repeat Rocky. This one kind of feels like it's in a Rocky 2 phase. To me, I mean, I'm not talking about in terms of a bunch of fights. I agree with you that we're probably not going to get a whole lot of this, but a lot of fighting in this one. But I think that generally speaking, I feel like this one is going to it feels like a bit of a repeat of the first one in a certain way, because I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I'm so close to the first one. Just because first
Joel,
one...
You don't have to convince me or our listeners. And the majority of our listeners are in the 99%. I'm the only one in the corner pocket of the internet saying it looks better than the first one. And I like the first one quite a bit. But, the first movie is perfect. And if you think it's anything less than perfect, you hate it. And if you hate it, you're a traitor. Just kidding. Or you're a troll behind a keyboard. There you go, gaudy producers that listen to this show.
That was a pretty good comeback, gotta say.
Stupid gaudy producers. All right. And the last trailer that we're going to talk about it's his directorial debut, right?
No, it is not. I think it might be his feature. I'm going to look that up real fast. I know he did a documentary a few years ago.
Okay.
Let me see here.
Yeah, you're right.
I am.
It's not his first. Okay, so I just want to make sure before I made a bold statement like that. But anyway, this one's called Blaze, and this one focuses on the musician Blaze Foley, played by I had his name. Excuse me. It was right there. Where'd it go? Oh, Ben Dickey. Sorry. Ben Dickey plays this character. It is co-written and directed by Ethan Hawke. Yes, that Ethan Hawke, which is now, one of Joel's favorite performances and one of his favorite movies of the year so far. So, Ethan's on a roll right now. But this trailer, like I said, focuses on this musician. So we kind of see the ups and downs of his career. We get to see his relationships. I finally get to see what is her name. What is her name, Joel? Arrested Development chick.
Oh, Alia Shawkat.
Yes. So I've enjoyed her work on Arrested Development, but I'm excited to see her in like a dramatic role. It looks like she's going to be playing his love interest. But this looks like
she was also in Green Room.
That's right. See, yeah. You know what? She's just so good that she goes unnoticed. That makes no sense, but you guys understand. All right, so
yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, whatever. It's late. This trailer, it looks really great. I love the kind of warm orange glaze that this movie kind of has over it. It almost kind of represents the character's first name, Blaze. Fire, orange, and red. So it kind of has
also
like this.
And also Texas.
Yeah, exactly. It's prominently featured in this trailer as a Texas film. Out in the middle of nowhere where this guy's playing his guitar, and it just looks like it's a really great kind of showcase of this musician and his life. And I think the cinematography is gorgeous. It's very warm and inviting, but at the same time, there's a lot of powerful scenes in the trailer that are really intense. So they kind of are in contrast to the color palette, and I just think it's a really great looking trailer. And this could maybe score Ethan Hawke a nomination in the writing category, maybe even director. I actually think that this trailer is that good, and maybe even this Ben Dickey cat, because he's praised a lot in the trailer, from critic quotes. So maybe he could sneak in there. But I think as a trailer that kind of represents, or not represents, but kind of looks like Inside Llewyn Davis, which they even make a reference to. I never saw that movie, but I remember that trailer. It pretty much has the same vibe going for it. I think this looks like it could be a real home run.
Whoa. Sorry. Opened my mouth to speak and it decided to cough. Yeah, it looks really strong. Very kind of modest in terms of production. It's obviously a very small movie, but looks quite touching too. And yeah, I'm very excited to see this. Big fan of Hawk, obviously Texan native. He knows this territory, and he's from Austin. For those who don't know. Yeah, really, really excited. That's in fact part of the reason why he teams up with Richard Linklater. They're very good friends from very many years ago, and so that's why they team up so many times, because they know each other very, very well. And yeah, it looks like a really strong movie. Dickey looks really good, and I have to wonder if he is related to Dale Dickey, who's that actress that shows up in. Let's see. I'm going to see this because it doesn't say. Okay. Well, in any case, yeah, this is his only role, I think, or he had like one other thing. Yeah, really, really strong looking debut for sure.
So quick little thing. I was looking up this guy's name. The cinematographer, Steve, or Joel, you're better at pronouncing names than I am. Steve Kozins. He shot Blaze, and it's got wonderful cinematography, right? He also did, from a few years ago, Born to be Blue, which I saw at South by Southwest Film Festival. That stars Ethan Hawke, and he plays real life jazz musician Chet Baker, and that had wonderful cinematography as well. So that makes total sense that they would reteam.
Yeah. I never did see that one. I was interested in it. And I'm looking through his. He also did Mean Dreams, which was one of Bill Paxton's last movies. Yeah, wow, this guy's done a lot. But yeah, it looks like a really strong movie for sure. I'm excited to see it. Hopefully it'll get like a proper release. I can imagine that it will. So, all right, let's get into my review. Oh, also, what was your favorite trailer?
Oh, that's a good question. I like the Creed 2 trailer, but I think just coming out of left field with it and knocking me in the face going, hey, this movie's coming out and it's really weird and you're going to like it. I'm like, yeah, I probably will. Is Welcome to Marwen. I kind of enjoy it. The more I think about it, the more I just kind of... I can't stop thinking about it, where I'm just like, how is this movie going to be even portrayed? So I think that's probably my favorite.
Well, mine's obviously Nobody's Fool. I'm just kidding. Mine might be Blaze, actually. In terms of trailer construction and editing and all that, that's my pick. All right, let us know what your pick is and what your favorite piece of news is, all that, and then let's get into my review of Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. Now, of course, this one is a sequel to 2015's Jurassic World. It takes place not relatively short period of time after that ended. Jurassic World, of course, is destroyed after the events of the last movie shut down and all that. So we catch up with the characters played by Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt. Claire, played by Howard, is now an advocate for, get this, dinosaur rights. She works for a nonprofit. And Owen, the character played by Pratt, is in like reclusivity. He's kind of building his own cabin on the edge of a lake in the middle of nowhere. But they are called back by the former partner of John Hammond, who was, of course, one of the creators of Jurassic Park in the original series. And he's basically, this guy's name is Lockwood. He's played by James Cronwell, and he's wanting to try to protect the dinosaurs, which are about to be destroyed by a giant volcano that is active. Jeff Goldblum comes back to cameo as Ian Malcolm, and his solution is to let them all die because that's what we should have done in the first place. But Lockwood wants to keep them in a naturally enclosed space, and so he brings them back. But unfortunately, his partner has other intentions for them that I will not reveal here because, well, I will only reveal in like roundabout terms because there's a lot about this movie that has been concealed from the advertisements. And to kind of talk about those advertisements, it's kind of a brilliant method of doing things because, we were talking about the trailers being really lackluster and kind of dull, and they seem to reveal everything, and it definitely does not. It reveals only a lot about the first probably 45 minutes, and then it goes off on another track, which is pretty brilliant because it's telling the audience, you actually don't know what's going to happen here. So, having said that, weirdly enough, the best parts of this movie are the stuff that they revealed in the trailer, which is the escape from the island, the Isla Nublar island on which the dinosaurs have kind of taken control. And then it goes into a totally other like place, literally, and also figuratively. It less becomes an attempt to get away. I mean, there's elements of people trying to get away from dinosaurs, but it quiets down. It sets most of the action in a big mansion. Yes, I'm serious, and for reasons that I won't reveal here. But I also won't reveal them mostly because they're kind of underwhelming. It kind of goes to places that are a lot less interesting than where it started. So that's basically my initial thoughts, and to kind of break it down a little bit more. All right. So, wow. Honestly, there's not much to say about this movie. I was just thinking, how can I break this down further? And I can't so much. But I guess I'll just talk about the fact that there are a lot of characters here that feel completely extraneous. There's this pair of comedic sidekicks played by Justice Smith and Daniela something. I can't remember her last name. And they don't feel important at all. He's there to react really like scared at everything and scream like a little girl whenever he does it. She's there to be a twist on the damsel in distress kind of trope. She's very much in control almost the entire time. And then you have like a couple of villains. One of them is played by Ted Levine, or Levine, however you say his name. And he's just kind of a nothing character, and he gets his comeuppance, of course. And then the other characters, the other villain's played by Rafe Spall. He's a little more meaty. There's a lot more to his character than initially when we meet him. But most of that is still predictable. And then there's this like whole subplot involving a little girl in the mansion that doesn't really go anywhere. That's very interesting. And there's this really predictable revelation involving her character that is kind of dumb. So I'm ragging on this movie more than I should, though, because it really does get off to a pretty thrilling start. There's a lot of great action scenes. The very moments of the escape, the literal escape that we see most of in the trailer, honestly, it automatically wins the movie the Oscar for sound mixing. It's amazing, orally speaking, and it's visually impressive too. But it's like the various sounds that they're having to work with, the sounds that the dinosaurs make, the sounds of the exploding volcano behind them, and mixing all that together, mixing all the audio, the sounds of the little hamster ball that they're rolling that they were featured in the first movie, and all of that. It's just very impressive, and it's just also impressive on a filmmaking standpoint. There's not a lot of cuts in the action, so it's very fluid. It kind of reminded me a bit of like Incredibles 2, honestly, in terms of the fact that he was able to pull some of this off. It's very impressive, and it gets off to a thrilling start. I was into it. I was like, man, it really needs to keep this up because I'm really gonna like this movie by the end. I'm a huge fan of the first movie in this particular series cycle. I think the Jurassic World is still terrific. I know it's kind of people have gone soft on it in the past couple of years. Have had a lot of complaints, but I don't buy into any of them. I think that it's a ride. I think it's a lot of fun, and without completely repeating all of the notes of the first movie. I think that it certainly mirrors it, but I think it goes in some different directions that were really fun and interesting. And this one kind of reins it back into kind of a bleak movie. Honestly, it's a lot darker than Jurassic World was. At its darkest moments, there's just a lot going on. It's a big, wild roller coaster ride, and it's too much of one. It's too exhausting. There's too much going on. And there's really not much more to say here. The performances, there's nothing to really write about them. The screenplay is very simple. It's written by the first film's director, Colin Trevorrow, and of course his writing partner, Derek Connolly. Although they're alone this time, they were joined by two others for the first one, and those two others are not part of this. So it's very simple, very, very simple structure. It's literally divided into two halves. And the first half's a little shorter, but much more effective. And that is literally all I have to say about this movie. It's really, there's not much there. So I'm going to give it a C+.
Joel, you call yourself a film critic? What are you, a troll behind a keyboard? This is ridiculous.
Oh boy. Yeah, I'm going to give it a C+. You could do worse. It's whatever. It's okay. It's okay. It's good for like casual watching on HBO in case you want to do that later on in the year. But it's really not. It's not. It's probably my least favorite. It's my least favorite movie in this franchise so far. The first one's an all-timer for me. I love it. Kind of a masterpiece, honestly, in terms of summer entertainments. I think The Lost World is incredibly underrated. I have enormous love for that movie. I think Jurassic Park 3 is a lot of fun. It's the least of those three, but it's a lot of fun. Jurassic World, I already talked about that. This one is just kind of whatever for me. There's a lot of flash and bang and all that.
Joel,
but
I have to ask you, since the Jurassic World kind of did a blend of the two, did they still do a blend of CGI and practical, or did they just go all CGI?
Yes, they did a blend. There were definitely a lot of practical elements. Now there is a big main dinosaur, because there always seems to be one that they have to go up against. It's a little more generic than the ones previously, especially pales in comparison to the Indominus Rex from the last movie, which I thought was a lot more interesting, because there was a lot of different dinosaurs in that one, and there's really only two combined to make this one. And both of them are fairly similar, so it's just kind of a big version of one of those, and that one seems to be mostly CGI, but really good CGI. All of the others, they seem to blend practical and CG pretty well. So I was happy to see that for sure. It's obviously a sticking point for a lot of people. It's not so much for me, because I'm down for whatever, but yeah, it is an impressive visual specimen, I will just say. The cinematography is really good. Of course, this one's directed by J.A. Bayona, who did The Impossible. He also did two movies I haven't seen, The Orphanage and A Monster Calls, which I've heard really good things about. I love The Impossible. The Impossible is amazing. This is weak sauce compared to something like that. So yeah, it was underwhelming. It's not bad though. I do get the feeling that a lot of people are overreacting to this movie's badness. I think that you could have a lot worse than this. And so yeah, I'd give it a C+. It's around on the same level of, something like Rampage, or whatever. So that's pretty much my thoughts on this one.
Well,
so.
you know what's great about kind of like, because it sounded like you were bored, and I feel like we need to spice Joel up a little bit. And I think this next film, I'm pretty sure we'll get anyone in a giddy mood, because it is a fantastic documentary. Joel, what is it?
Well, this one is called "Won't You Be My Neighbor." Chase saw this like a month and a half ago at Diff, and I just saw it within the last week or so. Um, this one is a documentary from director Morgan Neville, and it tells basically kind of the story of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and in particular its creator, Fred Rogers. Yeah, so I was super excited for this. I thought that it sounded and looked terrific. I had heard great things out of festivals, leading up to its release, including from my friend here. Um, and I was really excited for it, and it fulfilled all of that. It's so good. There's a couple of missed opportunities, but I'll talk about that in a second. In any case, yeah, I really really like this. So it's been like a month and a half for you. Have you? Has that time caused you to cool on it a little bit? Has it reinforced it through consideration? What's going on in that head of yours after a month and a half?
I seriously think I don't know if they'll make my top 10, maybe top 20, but three of the best films I saw at that festival were actually all documentaries, where you have Three Identical Strangers, Generation Wealth,
yeah,
and Won't You Be My Neighbor. And
yeah.
those were three of the best movies I saw at that festival. And I saw First Reformed and Hearts Beat Loud in the same festival. So it was a strong festival all around. It was like picking hairs at that point. But Won't You Be My Neighbor, after kind of sitting on it for almost 2 months now, I still think about it and still kind of just remember my experience. I remember the kid that sat next to me that he wasn't all the way blind, but he was kind of partially blind, didn't really grow up Mr. Rogers. And even he, who couldn't even really see the screen that well, was like getting emotionally attached to Mr. Rogers' voice. And just like, if that's not a clear enough message as to why this man was important, I don't know what is. Because even if you don't know who he is and you just hear his voice and you can start tearing up, that shows you right there that this was one of those unique human beings that was just so kind and so, empathetic, and just really was just a warm person. You know what I'm saying? To where like you can't get mad at him. You can't really fault the man. It's just like he was just doing the best he could, and you gotta just love him for it. Like he was just a really great person all around. And it's just I think at the end of the year it will go down as one of my favorite movies I watched, but one of my favorite kind of theater experiences, because it was a packed house. People were really into it, and I think it still resonates after all this time.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I feel like Rogers lived such a long, full life that the only real hang-up I have, and it's the only reason I didn't on my website give this 4 stars, is because it definitely feels like they didn't cover the entirety of his life. But that's also kind of a compliment, because it's more of a compliment to him, I guess, because it says a lot that a documentary this good and this comprehensive can't cover everything. And so, because there's a lot that we don't know about his childhood. They could have done a deeper dive into that. I think that they bring up a couple of topics about sort of the more human and vulnerable side of him, without really going into it. He was kind of a secretive person, so maybe their hands were tied in that respect. But nevertheless,
but I think you're right though. They should have went. As much as I love the movie, now that you bring it up, they could have done more of like a mini series or like episodic thing and threw it on PBS and really kind of explore his life.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's not really like a complaint. It's more like just a limitation of access and all that. They have access to a lot here, and they use it really well. It's a warm blanket. It's a warm blanket of a movie, and it's one that we need right now, especially in such divisive times. It's a movie that is about empathy. It's about a person who called for it in everyday life. We see him in a couple of instances here, in a couple of different kind of interviews, use the tools from his show to illustrate empathy. So you have like the congressional hearing where uh, Richard Nixon's trying to gut funding for public television, and he goes on and uses the words of a silly song to make a particularly, curmudgeonly kind of one of the people in charge of the hearing, who's particularly like staunchly curmudgeonly, kind of stubborn about the fact that public television is not needed, and he single-handedly changes his mind using that song, and leaves the guy nearly speechless, and it's so moving. And then you have the other thing where somebody kind of calls into question seemingly his integrity in some way, and he just brings out a puppet and entertains him and kind of humbles him a little bit. It's just such a warm, thoughtful, empathetic movie about warm, thoughtful empathy. That's how I can put it. And we get some of the insight into the show, which began as the children's corner, was still kind of steeped in the slapstick that he was trying to turn away from, that he was appalled by, and then we get just kind of this peek into how the show reflected his own values, how that kindly man on the TV that we would watch daily essentially was the actual Fred Rogers. There was no real difference between the on-screen persona and the real life figure, except for he might cuss a few times, and that's about it. It was just a long, full life of an incredibly respectful and respectable man who argued for. First of all, he argued for TV that was different from the type that was so prevalent then. He would favor silence and patience over slapstick, and trying to falsely engage kids who he really did not underestimate, as everybody else did, as being simpler or dumber than they are. He respected them. He knew that they would like this because it's just an instant empathetic quality in people that he was.
Because one of the producers was in one of the interviews, or one of the interviewees, and she even said that, like, even for that time, he was radical.
Yeah, he was radical, of course. Yeah, I mean, and also the topics, like
exactly, assassination.
In his first week was when I think it was in his first week was it death, or was it? I think it might have been divorce, or
it was something like that.
Yeah, it was some fairly adult topic that he was trying to convey to kids through his puppets. He loved puppets, and he loved using silly voices and all that. And so you have this documentary that's divided into kind of three, well, really kind of two modes of operation. One, it's a way for others to talk about him, and that's kind of generally speaking, I don't want to say less effective, but slightly less informative part, because then you have the other half, which is a lot of archival footage and interviews with him, and he's able to speak for himself in those, and so you get more of the portrait of him from himself, and it's really insightful, and so you have also this aside from the insight that it gives to us about his shows and all of that, not only did he do the Children's Corner, then Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, he also did one for adults called was it like Old Faces, New Faces, or something like that, that didn't really work out. It was the only gap in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood that happened for 3 years in the 70s. It ran from 1968 to 2001, and then you had this also really touching bit of insight into two particular puppets that meant a lot to him. One was King Friday the 13th, which is a great name. I had forgotten that that's what the king was named, by the way, until I saw the movie. I had forgotten that they had made that kind of amusing little pun, which, of course, I wouldn't have known as a kid because I wasn't aware of what Friday the 13th was. But and then also Daniel Striped Tiger, which of course was a staple of his show, and was so important to him because it was him. It was most directly him, and he would do quite ballsy things with that particular character. Sometimes confronting issues, sometimes confronting the fact that sometimes we can't confront issues, and such as trauma or loss or insecurities and what have you. It's such a great portion of the movie, that particular part. And I could talk about all the stories that they tell all day. It would take like 3 hours, but it's just such a good documentary. And by good, I don't just mean that it's a really good movie. I mean that it emanates goodness, and it teaches goodness in teaching us about this man. And I just have to applaud that. It has little lost opportunities, but I absolutely can't go any lower than an A- on this. It's so good. It's definitely a top 10 contender. This is one that I really want to see again, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I think that really shows how strong the movie is. It's an immediate rewatch. I absolutely would watch this again right now. It's that good. So definitely an A- for this one. And I know that you've kind of already talked about your grade, but you'd give it an A, right?
Yeah, I give it a solid A. It's just one of those things to where if you never knew anything about this guy, he was a guy that pioneered kids shows with mature themes, and he uses colorful kind of stuff like puppets or backgrounds, but he implements real life issues, and that is what makes these shows smarter, and having kids kind of mature their brains a little bit better than as he put it, like watching Transformers and stuff. So it's a really great documentary, and I give it a solid A, and I recommend it to anyone. Just like with that kid that sat next to me, if you've never even heard of him growing up because he was on for decades before he passed, or if you were like me and Joel who grew up with him watching PBS and stuff, even older generations, then this documentary is for you.
For sure. All right, guys. That's pretty much it. That's our episode. And next week is a big one. It's going to be our mid-year report. Now, a reminder of how this is going to work, as I went over a couple weeks ago. First, we're going to be counting down our lists of the top 5 worst films of the year. And then we are going to do our lists of the top 5 best films of the year. And then we'll have, the breakdowns of both. I'm sure that Chase will be having his little marker board out. And
damn right I will have that
yes.
marker board out.
Absolutely. All right. So, Chase, is there anything else? There's not. It's pretty much the end of the show, right?
It's pretty much the end of the show, but
let us know what you thought of those movies if you have seen them, or if you see them sometime within the next week. And then I guess my plug in terms of the internet is going to be that you can find my writings at joelonfilm.com. I have a couple of reviews coming this weekend, including Jurassic World. I'm kind of late on that. I saw it literally like a couple hours before we recorded, so I'm off to write my review after this. So I should have that and a couple of others up by tomorrow morning. And you can find me on Twitter at RealJoelCopling and on Letterboxd at JCopling.
Yeah, if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, it's at RealChaseley. Subscribe to my YouTube channel where you can see my in-depth review on Won't You Be My Neighbor and all the Dallas International Film Festival selections. And then, of course, for this podcast, if you're listening on Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, or SoundCloud, please spread it around and let people know this is the definitive movie podcast. And I cannot believe it. Next week is already halfway through the year. Like, that just blows my mind. And so, oh, God. Before you know it, it's going to be episode 500, and I'm going to be like, Joel, what happened? He's like, I don't even know what happened. And I don't know. We're going to be like 80 years old. So, Yeah, so that will be next week is the mid-year report. Can't wait to do that with you guys. And, of course, the following week, just to kind of pimp out a blockbuster that everyone's looking forward to is Ant-Man and the Wasp. But that will be kind of the main thing. And then I know at some point in July, since they moved it, we haven't figured out, that. But July's got a lot of great indie movies as well, including one of Joel's favorite of the year, 8th Grade. So that's coming up as well. So just a little sneak preview as to what we're doing. So yeah, that will do it for this episode, guys. 235, and next week 236 with the mid-year report. I apologize if I stuttered or whatever throughout this entire podcast. I feel like I failed you guys. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm trying. Just gotta get some sleep. But yeah, I hope you guys have a great night, great day whenever you're listening to this, and please continue on listening. And hey, listen, if you made it through this entire movie podcast and you're not a movie fan, well, hopefully we convinced you to be one. That's Joel over there. I'm Chase. We'll see you guys next week for the mid-year report on Real Me and Colin, a movie podcast. Peace out. You guys are awesome.
Bye.